Everybody, it's Darren with Trot. Hey, Trot.
Darren, how are you today?
I'm doing, I guess, pretty good under the circumstances with everything that's going on in this magnificent country of ours. And this is an emergency podcast.
Yes, it is.
That we are having as a result of the attempted assassination on former President Trump. And, we won't go into that so much on this podcast. I think the details, at least we're recording this on July 15th, excuse me, is when we're recording this. And you can tell, what our position is on the entire on the entire event, based on what we're wearing. Kind of speaks for itself, I think. So here's what we're going to do on this emergency podcast. Let me tell you what we're not going to do. I've already talked about it. We're not going to rehash the assassination attempt. We're not going to rehash all of the things up to at least as of July 15th anyway that you have already seen, heard, or aware of. Okay, so we're not going to do that. And I think you have a pretty good idea what our opinion is on the events, of course, again, based on what Trot and I are wearing on our heads. And what I wanted to do, and what we thought would be appropriate, especially in terms of us multifamily owners, in terms of what's going on out there and what should we be thinking of. There's a couple of things that I think deserve the emergency podcast time for you to think about. Because let's play this out for a second, Trot. So let's say a lot of what people haven't been talking about. I mean, some have, but a lot of what people aren't talking about is what if the assassin who's dead, what if the assassin were successful? So former President Trump is killed and assassinated, there in Pennsylvania. What do you think could happen as a result of that?
I think the best theory I've seen, or maybe the deepest theory I've seen, was civil war breaking out.
I think that's probable. And here's the interesting thing about that. And I said we weren't going to get into the particulars, and we're not. But this leads up to what you need to be thinking about when it comes to your multifamily and your properties and what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you would have said that like 2 years ago, you would have been labeled a conspiracy theorist. You're crazy. You look at you. You're how old? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. So that would have been easy to say. But we all know that in today's world, it's not. In today's world, it's not. So please continue.
Well, that's just, I don't know if it would have been, two different sides of troops and a bunch of funding here and there. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been more like, like 2020 riot time, where it was more two different groups of people just going head to head, basically.
Yeah. And what really brought it home to me, because I think you're right, and what kind of form that could take if we have, let's just call it a bunch of civil unrest. And by the way, that's not to say if there is an election, it might have happened depending on who, you just don't know. But I think we could sit here, and it's probable that if the former president was assassinated, there would be a lot of civil unrest. And that begs the question, is there a time that we could see, if it's not for that, could there be some civil unrest at some point in time in the future? And I think if you think about it, the odds are pretty good. So what should you be thinking of as a multifamily owner if that's the case? If there is a situation where, a lot of times we'd say the proverbial shit hits the fan. But what if the shit really hits the fan here? What should you be thinking of, and what should you be doing? So let's throw a couple things out there if you've not been thinking about this that you need to be thinking about. First of all, you need to have like a shit hits the fan, really hits the fan plan. There's the saying, what's the paranoid, the paranoid survive, or the paranoid always survive, or something like that. It's so a lot of people will say that, but in cases like this, it's good to have a plan in place, at least a semblance, an outline of a plan of, okay, if the shit really hits the fan, what is our first thing we're going to do, second thing, third thing? And you better at least have an idea, because it's not just about, Darren, we've got a reserve account.
Right. There's more there needs to be an application of the reserve
Yeah.
account.
Well, we got a reserve account. Just, we got that. No, we're talking about what if the switch is completely shut off? I mean, maybe not only finance, but a whole bunch of other areas. What are you going to do? What's your plan? What are you going to be thinking of when it comes to your properties? It comes to you, first of all, your properties, and any investors that maybe you've got involved in your properties. What are the conversations you're going to be having? And of course, you can't forward into an exact scenario, but you need to be thinking about what if and what kind of things are you going to be focusing on and what kinds of things are you going to be doing. And you may be thinking, and you got to be thinking deep on this, because you may be thinking, well, we're talking reaction to something bad that happens. That's of course what we're talking about. But I guarantee if something were to happen, there would also be situations where it could be an opportunity too. Could very well be an opportunity. And this isn't to say that we want to take advantage of anybody. No, of course not. But, there could be opportunities at some point in time. You just don't know. And so you need to be thinking of having a semblance of worst case scenarios. What are we going to do? What are we going to have in place? How do we plan on implementing what we believe we have in place? And we've got at least an idea or a semblance of a plan to do that. Okay. And it's super important that you do. You can't put your head in the sand, and we talk with a lot of people whose heads are in the sand on this. Put your head in the sand and kind of hope it all works out. Think it's all going to be okay, and and gee whiz, we'll deal with it when it comes up. No, you can't be doing that, right?
Right. And it's interesting too. You're looking at the offensive side of it too. A lot of times it's how do you defend yourself from this stuff? How do you stay basically afloat? Mm-hmm. And you make an interesting point. There's always room to capitalize as well. And a lot of times it's on someone else's, what, for lack of a better term, downfall. But you got to be thinking that as well.
You got to be I'm just saying, you just got to be thinking deep on this. At what could there be? What kind of possibilities are there on the worst case scenario side, and what kind of possibilities could there be, on an opportunity side of things, and this not only goes for what recently happened here over the weekend, but you looking forward, so let's talk about the election. So let's say it's November, and everybody's alive, okay. I'm talking candidates. I mean, whoever wins the election, there's going to be unrest, right? And so you want to be thinking about, okay, if for some reason this unrest gets really close to me, my properties, what am I going to be doing, and how am I going, what am I going to do? And have a plan in place, right?
Right.
And it's not silly, it's not conspiracy theory anymore to at least have an idea in place on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Now, whether you pull the trigger and do it, hopefully we never have to. But then it's also on the other side of it, okay, if something happens and we get through a really, really tough period of time, how can we come out of that better than ever? Is that possible? You want to be thinking about that too.
Right, exactly.
And so, look, guys, here's the deal. Again, we talked about, we're not going to go over our personal opinions about everything that happened and take you through step by step on, this or that. We're not going to do that. I think you understand where our position is with everything here, in terms of our support and who we support through this process. But we just want to make sure that we communicate to you that the paranoid do survive. You need to be having some kind of a semblance of a plan in place in the event the shit really hits the fan. Not kind of, not maybe. Oh, gee, we got a reserve account. That's kind of good. We got a property in good location. It's good. That's all good. But if things get really bad, what's your plan? What are you going to do? What makes sense for you personally? What makes sense to your partners, if you have them? What makes sense to others? What makes the most sense, and at least have a plan at least drawn up. So heaven forbid anything happens, you at least can hit the ground running and do what is necessary for you to do.
Right, exactly.
So I want to thank you, and Trot, I know you want to thank everybody for joining us for this very brief, but we think very necessary episode of the Heartland Multifamily Show Emergency Podcast, the place
For all things multifamily.
for all things multifamily. Thank you very much. Have a good day. God bless America. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this video and you want to make multifamily a bigger part of your investing world, make sure you click here on this video to discover the 3 easy ways to invest in and own your own multifamily property.